All right, ladies and gentlemen, we want to continue so that we can stay on time. And our next speaker serves as Senior Counsel for Liberty Institute and Legal Editor for the Breitbart News Network. He's authored several briefs on constitutional issues across the country, including, by the way, the one adopted by the U.S. District Court in striking down Obamacare in its entirety. A national best-selling author, he wrote The Blueprint, Obama's Plan to Subvert the Constitution and Build an Imperial Presidency, and also the book Resurgent, How Constitutional Conservatism Can Save America, published by Simon & Schuster, with FRC's Ken Blackwell. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the podium constitutional expert Ken Klukowski.
Well, thanks so much. So great to be with all of you today in a time that is unprecedented in our nation's history. At Liberty Institute, we work as the largest law firm in the United States, exclusively dedicated to protecting the religious liberty of all Americans. Because the reality is that religious liberty is not, as you've heard over the past 6.5 years from this administration, freedom of worship. It is not simply what you do going into the four walls of your church or house of worship on Sunday morning or at some other point during the week. Because the implication when someone talks about, oh, well, we'll protect your freedom of worship, is that that's where your freedom ends. Now, the reality is that we have a First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment that has 6 clauses in it that enumerate 6 separate fundamental rights regarding no establishment of religion, the free exercise of religion, free speech, free press, the freedom to petition your government, and to peaceably assemble as the American people. Now, the reality is none of those are redundant with each other. Freedom of worship, well, part of that is your speaking. That's already covered in free speech. But there is a clause in the First Amendment right before the free speech clause, and that is guaranteeing that the government shall not abridge the free exercise of your religious faith. That was the founding freedom of this country. The people who came across an ocean in the early 1600s left everything they knew to hack their way through a wilderness, losing some of their children and loved ones along the way. They did not do that so they could show up for an hour and a half on Sunday morning, and aside from that, had to live however the government told them to live. Instead, they came here to be able to order the daily affairs of their lives, how they live their life, how they raise their children, and how they run their businesses or serve in public life consistent with their religious beliefs. And this topic could not be more timely. If someone had asked a public figure a year ago, or even the day after the Supreme Court's gay marriage decision, Obergefell v. Hodges, in June of this year, if someone had asked a public figure the next day, hey, do you think there are going to be any Christians going to jail over this? They would have been laughed away. Well, it was no laughing matter when we saw a Christian woman in Kentucky put behind bars for 6 days because she could not violate her religious faith. She could not violate her conscience. Now, there's plenty of different situations out there with plenty of different facts. It's inevitable that in some situations, not everyone is a lawyer. Many people, their parents loved them too much to let them go to law school. And so for a lot of people, we can expect that honest mistakes can be made in terms of whether or not what they're doing is actually fully protected by the First Amendment. Many times I think we'll have a situation where parts of what they want to refrain from are in fact protected by the First Amendment. Other things, they might be a little confused on exactly where the limits of protection are in terms of how far that they can reach. But when we get into situations like that, and those people get dragged into court, federal judges have all sorts of tools at their disposal for how to enforce their decrees or try to explain what they're doing or trying to work with the parties before them. We do not want to become a country where when someone says, I cannot do this because of my conscience, I cannot do this because of my Christian faith, and I think the First Amendment is on my side here, we do not want to become a country where a federal judge orders federal agents to seize that person, put them in handcuffs, and put them behind bars. America must be a place where our fundamental rights are respected at all levels of government and at all times. And at Liberty Institute, we're litigating many of those cases right now. That's libertyinstitute.org. I'm going to channel my inner Senator Cruz here. libertyinstitute.org. That's libertyinstitute.org. And in fact, if you go by our booth today, we have just unveiled today a religious liberty protection kit for churches and also for schools. Even if you're not affiliated with either, I'd encourage you to go there, get a copy, or go to our website, which again is libertyinstitute.org, where you'll find all of it online as well, where we're able to lay out legal protection steps that Christians and people of various peaceful faiths can take to protect not just your house of worship, but to try and protect your daily affairs, certainly your schools. It's a shame that we live in an era where we have to put out kits telling people how to protect their religious liberty. But providentially, that is the hand that we have been dealt at present. That is the fight that we find ourselves in. And with God's help, that is a fight we will win. And I'm thankful that recent events have highlighted the importance of religious liberty. It's now part of the presidential debate. It's going to be part of the congressional cycle. People who say there are segments of society that try to get us away from talking about social issues, whether it's religious liberty purely, or whether that's how it works itself out in practical life on questions of marriage or abortion or any number of issues. The reality is this, that religious liberty is now front and center because people are understanding how that and free speech are just pervasive to every aspect of American lives. Right. Now, there is often a difference between what the U.S. Constitution says and what 5 unelected lawyers on the Supreme Court say the Constitution says. But the reality is this. After the next presidential election, there will be 3 of 9 Supreme Court justices over the age of 80. The reality is that the next president of the United States is likely to have at least 3 Supreme Court appointments. Whatever issue it is that you care about, maybe you're not as focused on religious liberty as some of us are. Maybe it's Obamacare, health care. Maybe it's the Second Amendment. Maybe it's any number of other issues, the EPA and environmental rules. We are seeing so many 5-4 decisions coming down out of the U.S. Supreme Court. The reality is there are great constitutional conservatives out there who those who work in the legal community know if they were sitting on the U.S. Supreme Court, you'd never have to think twice about what way they would come down. We don't need any more surprises in terms of the kind of Supreme Court justices that we get. And I think it would be wonderful for religious liberty if all of you in this room and everyone joining us through the television were to press every presidential candidate and every candidate for public office to say, I hear what you're saying about issues, whatever that issue is, religious liberty or any other. I hear what you're saying about the issues, but I know that by a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court can knock down whatever it is you're promising me. So I really have to know, what kind of person would you put on the U.S. Supreme Court? And this is not a time to just be told, oh, very conservative, or oh, I'm with you, or you know where I'm at. Well, actually, we usually don't. And so that is a priority, I think, for everyone in caring about religious liberty, to be engaged, to be involved, to exercise your rights to free speech, and to make those who would rule over us, who would hold governing power for a period of time, to get them to state clearly, explicitly, and on the record where they are protecting our rights to religious liberty, free speech, and all of the constitutional rights that we hold dear. Thank you so much, and God bless you.